Hello, everybody.
Hello, hello.
Oh,
Hello.
we got
Hello.
room is slowly filling up on this magical Wednesday, February the 24th.
I have to say, I was very thrilled today that I woke up to the sound of birds chirping and I was like, spring already?
I know we are, it's the hope is there. We're around the corner. I don't know. We've had so much snow in Toronto that it's getting a little bit, the sun definitely helps. The melt away, that we can move into something, a warmer, more outdoor friendly time.
24 days, 24 days, I think.
Yeah. Everybody, so I'll just, I will start, I'll introduce myself. I'm Candace. I run a boutique PR agency in Toronto, Canada. In case there's any of you, we had some people from overseas in our last session. Thank you and welcome back to those of you who are joining us for this session 2, which is the Black Experience, Addressing Racism in Fashion. If you could all just type in the chat where you're coming at us from, so we can get a sense of the landscape from which everybody's joining us, that would be great. And we'll get started in another 45 seconds to a minute. Wow, we've got Dallas, Brooklyn, New York, Montreal, Toronto, Ottawa, Portland, Oregon, Vancouver. You got good representation. London, Ontario, Jersey City. Amazing. Well, welcome again to the second session of the WARE webinars today. I am going to do a land acknowledgement. The land I am standing on today is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. Toronto is built on sacred land that is part of agreement between Indigenous peoples and allied nations to peacefully and respectfully care for it. We share this acknowledgement because it is evident that the colonial structures used to once settle this land. They are the same systems that support the exploitation of resources and people in the global fashion industry today. We at Fashion Takes Action are making an effort to dismantle these colonial structures by providing platforms like WARE that give a voice to the people who are being exploited and acknowledge the need to prioritize respect for both the land and the people involved in making our clothes. Before we begin, I'd like to thank our generous sponsors, the BDC and Stringer LLP, whose support allows us to offer these sessions to you at little to no cost. I'd also like to acknowledge there's a donation function, and we've had, a really great support there. So thank you to those of you who were able to do that. I will say that there'll be time for some questions. So please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen to pose any of those questions to the speakers, and only use the chat function for sharing links or any expressions of enthusiasm. Those are great too. And you can also upvote a question by liking it, which will pop it up to the top of the list and sort of prioritize if we do get a lot of questions. We had quite a few in the last session, which is great. It's a testament to the interest in these themes today. The theme for this month overall is equity, diversity, and inclusion in fashion. We believe that an integral component of sustainability is to embrace diverse communities and the unique voices they support. Today, we will hear from some of the voices that have been in the shadows and shine the spotlight on those who are leading change. We will learn how we can help to dismantle the existing colonial framework and rebuild a culture of inclusivity in fashion. I'm so thrilled to be able to welcome Lindura and George Sully today for this fireside chat. Again, it's the title of this one is The Black Experience, Addressing Racism in Fashion. George Sully is what one might call a true multi-hyphenate. He's a multidisciplinary designer, entrepreneur, and activist. Those are just a few of the ways one could describe him. Based in Toronto with an impressive worldwide network, Sully has established a collective of multifaceted companies that leverage him as an innovative player in the world of multimedia content creation and fashion design. A Fashion Group International Visionary Award winner, Sully is perhaps best known as the original maker of the Star Trek Discovery Starfleet boot. Sully is also a Bata Shoe Museum inductee. He's the creator of Black Designers of Canada, which, by the way, has award ceremonies going on today. He's co-founder of House of Hela and creator of the newly minted brand Sully and Son Company. You can follow along with George's many adventures on Instagram at Real George Sully. And Lindura. Lindura works as a model, actress, and activist. She is very interested in the intersection between the fashion industry and environmental justice. As a social media influencer, she works diligently to represent sustainable brands and showcase local entrepreneurs who are taking steps to reduce their environmental impact and empower their communities. In her role as co-founder of Plastic Free Toronto, she hosts workshops and community building events and lectures about sustainability, climate change, and social justice. She's been featured in publications such as Toronto Life Magazine, Spring Magazine, and the National Observer. Get a glimpse of the life and work of Lindura on IG at Life of Lindura. Welcome, George and Lindura, and thank you for being here today. Over to you.
Thank you so much for having us. Hello, everybody. I'm so excited that there's so many people here. Thank you for popping in the chat to let us know where you are from. Kelly, Candace, the whole entire Fashion Takes Action team, thank you for having us. And I also want to extend a thank you to, planet Earth, the water, the plants, the insects, the animals that are sustaining us, also allowing us to be here. And as Candace alluded to with her land acknowledgement, we are also here because of all of our ancestors and the many relationships that they had with one another. So just before we get into it, before I start grilling you, George, about your amazing journey and how we can all learn from it, I just want to give a little bit of context. It's Black History Month. We're having a very important conversation. So just a few things that I wanted to just sort of bring into our awareness before we start chatting. So one of which, it wasn't until 1834 that the British Slavery Abolition Act came into play in Canada. And a lot of people don't realize that there was slavery in Canada. So I just want to bring attention to that. And once it was abolished, it was replaced by segregation. Though not written into law, it was practiced. Well, not written into law in all senses. It was practiced. It was not until 1983, quite recently, that the last racially segregated school in Canada closed. Until 1951, the Indian Act defined a person as any individual other than an Indian. And according to a 2018 report in Toronto, a Black person is 20 times more likely than a white person to be fatally shot by police. So I just want to remind us all of, we are here today because of our ancestry. We are here today because of the systems that were created back then, and many of which still remain today. And to this day, it is clear to me, and I think to a lot of us, and that's why we're here, it's that we do not all share in the privilege of being seen as human and treated with equal respect and dignity as such. And so I read the other day the words of Ijeoma Oluo, and I just wanted to, they just rang true to me, that the true work of anti-racism is the work of humanizing. And though I hope that this conversation helps to open our minds and our hearts to each other, to new ideas, to new ways of being, at the end of the day, the work of humanizing is something that no one can do for you. And as she said, if our anti-racism work prioritizes the growth and enlightenment of white America over the safety, dignity, and humanity of people of color, it's not anti-racism work. It's actually white supremacy. So that's something that really just blew my mind. I was like, God damn, that was an enlightening moment for me. So I just wanted to start this conversation and ground us in that knowing and in that welcoming of one another to start doing the work together. So without further ado, let us do some work, George.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Sure.
so I kind of wanted to start this conversation just by talking about some of the challenges that you've seen Black creatives face, that you've personally faced in this industry, sort of the challenges that we face in this industry, given that racism is still functioning, prevalent, et cetera, et cetera. So I can give some examples to start, or you can take it away.
You can give some examples, and Matt, see if we line up. Of course we will, but yeah, go ahead.
I
Absolutely.
mean, I don't know. I think we come from very different backgrounds. Like me as an actor and model, I see a very different side of things, I think, than you as like the designer, more closely working with clients and like, being in stores. So definitely different perspectives. But I think for me in the fashion industry, some of the ways that like I've personally seen racism come into play, or just like the effects of it really is just, what people might think of, or what people have probably heard of already, which is like models doing their own makeup backstage because makeup artists don't have the colors. Or, I've been on set before where like I was in the chair and the director suddenly came and was like, we want to put her hair up. And the hair artist was like, how? And I was like, okay, yeah. I mean, there's certain way, like we could do this, we could do that. And they're like, maybe you should just do it. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, things like that. Those are sort of
Yeah.
the things that I see. But I'm very curious to know, as someone who's, working from the ground up to build these brands, to get them into stores,
Of course, of
to,
course, of
like,
course.
what are the challenges that you see?
There's lots of challenges. Every we're not a monolithic group, you know what I mean? Everybody has different challenges,
Mhm.
absolutely. But I know for myself, you know, always, I mean, I don't want to date myself, but I've been brand ready since it's been a long time. Like my first brand, I got into Athlete's World, that's like 20 years ago. You know what I mean? Though I'm only 20, I would say, yeah. So probably make no sense, but I am dating myself, but I've always been ready. And it's one of those things that, excuses in the industry, like, you are only, it's athleisure, sorry, XYZ, and or there's no budget left, you know what I mean, to buy, even though, when everybody in the industry, all the designers, white, black, and or XYZ, and know that it's buying season and you're shut out, and you're not able to catch these meetings, though all your friends and your allies in the business are telling you. I'll always tell everybody that I'll never take a meeting without knowing exactly what's happening before the meeting even happens. So then when I'm being told that there's no budget all of a sudden, even though that they're flush with cash and they've been telling everybody that how much they're buying out, and then all of a sudden it comes to you and all, the doors start to shut and say, maybe next season, you know what I mean? Or and excuses and so on and so forth. And when it happens once, it's cool. Okay. I'll try next season. But then when it happens every season, and then 5 years goes by, and then X amount of years goes by, and your brand ready, that you are ready for the opportunity, or introducing someone to the brand and they're like, what, it's almost there, but if you just change this would definitely, and then you go back and you change it, and then you come back, you're right, that's awesome, great adjustment, but if you just changed that, and then you go back and you adjust it, and then you come back and another season, you know what, you almost have it. If you just made the shoe out of gold, because if you make it out of gold, then for sure we got you. And then so now forget gold, you make it out of titanium, and you come back and say, you know what, I went even further, and it's titanium. And then they're like, people start to run out of excuses, and then you realize, I've realized what was going on a long time beforehand, but there's some people that are not ready for this, or some people that are new to this, and they're going to get the ring around for years to come. Actually, they've done such a good job at brands coming in and shutting down that these brands, these businesses go out of business because they just feel like there's no chance, there's no opportunity, there's nothing for them here to work with. And in that way, there's a plausible deniability of there are no brands. I can't buy, BIPOC brands or Black designers or so on and so forth because there isn't any. Or you get an excuse where I've never really seen your brand around. I mean, only if you had more press, maybe, more kind of traction in the market. But it's funny because when you go to press, they're not looking for you. They don't know how to celebrate brands or people that look like me. They don't know where to categorize us. So what happens is that if you don't get press, and it's not by accident, and then you go to a store or a retailer and they're asking you that, well, if you don't have any press, it's a cycle, and it's a killing cycle where it's kind of like there's no start, there's no end. You can't onboard if you're not let on to the platform. So it's these things that, when we're talking about systemic racism, we're talking about something that's ingrained. You can't see it. I always relegate it to carbon monoxide. I'm here choking, but you can't see, smell, or hear, or and so on and so forth. You don't know it exists. We do. We feel it. It kills us. It kills our brands. It kills our spirits. But you can't see it. So George, what are you talking about? I mean, hey, I'm doing fine, or maybe it's because George, or maybe, maybe they just don't even like your stuff. It could be that as well, right? But the problem is for somebody like me is that I've done hundreds of thousands of dollars of business. I've done great volume. I've done department stores left, right, and center. So it's kind of like when you talk to somebody like me, I just sense when I hear the excuse, I know it's an excuse, because in the end, I'm more than ready. And there's hundreds of designers that are the same place as me that we're more than ready. You're looking at excellence, you know what I mean? So on and so forth. So it's time to, face the.
And I guess I'm assuming what birthed the Black Designers of Canada that you started.
Absolutely.
If you want to tell everyone a little bit about, how you think that's changed the game, and what else you think might have changed since the Black Lives Matter movement, like what else you've seen.
All great questions. The reason for creating Black Designers of Canada in the first place is that the Black community has been marginalized when it comes, to our place in the industry and what we've contributed to this industry. Creating a platform to just lessen the excuses that we commonly see in the industry, like Black designers actually don't exist, or they're not to snuff, and they just do athleisure, which is always the funny thing I see. I needed a place, some sort of proof of existence, a place you can go that you could see that we are counted, and we are by the mass. We're not by the 20, we're not by 50 or 60, 70 or 100. We are 180 strong designers, well-developed brands. And now you can see, so if ignorant, that solves your problem. If you just didn't know, and if you just really didn't know, it's a place that you can go as a stylist, photographer, department store, online stores, and so on and so forth. Just people in the industry can go there and use it as a tool if you didn't know. A lot of people did know, but it's one of those things that I feel that in the industry that I've uncovered something that was, if nobody does this, it's all good, because prior to June, everything was all good in the industry. Everybody was operating like 180 plus designers didn't exist. And, the go-tos and the tokens that were branded tokens of just saying, if we could just mention the 3 names that we know and celebrate them over and over again, nobody will know that everything is wrong with this industry as a whole. This was a medium to bring that to the surface and say, no, here we are. So celebrate us, count us, acknowledge us, and here we are. So that's what that is done. And to answer, Dan, to continue answering your question, it's done so much for Black designers, but people of color in general. Listen, to have designers that are about to quit and or getting calls just for a photo shoot, just for some sort of a mention or a post or an article, or being featured on a website, television show, film series. It has changed everything. And you know, you get emotional thinking about it, because people might think that, you know, getting just a feature or getting, you know, getting some sort of a fashion spread is this small. It's this big to a person of color who's never ever been recognized in any sense of the word, but have been more than worthy of.
Mhm.
It's something. It's very something special.
Definitely. You touched on so many important things, one of which I think is like the importance of visibility, and like you bringing visibility to that community, to our community, is so key in people no longer having certain excuses for not working with us, which is amazing. And I think representation is important and visibility is important for, I think, just me personally, like my journey with self-worth and realizing that like growing up in this society, I hadn't really realized how much the lack of visibility of myself had impacted me until I started to think about the fact that, like, when I was a kid growing up, my imagination consisted of like white people. Like, you picture a doctor and you picture like I pictured a white, like you picture a fairy, you picture a white
Absolutely.
fairy, you picture a princess, you picture a white, like there's so many ways in which it had like trickled into me that I hadn't even realized. So I think visibility, representation is important on so many levels. But I guess now the conversation is becoming, okay, so now we have these brands who realize that A, they can profit off of representation by including us and marketing to us. They can now tap into our audiences and our, you know, marketing our culture back to us. They can now profit off of us. And B, we have brands realizing, you know, maybe they actually want to make a change and start to sort of like level the playing fields and allow people to be heard and seen in ways that they weren't before. So they're showcasing us. And, you know, a lot of my audition notices that I see now are specifically seeking BIPOC people. That didn't used to be the case before BLM. It was like, you know, open to any ethnicity, you know, but now it's like there are a lot more that are specifically like, we want BIPOC or like BIPOC preference. And it's just like, these are great steps, but I'm wondering, where do we go next? And how does, you know, aiming for representation not devolve into tokenism or slacktivism? Like, we've slapped a Black model on the H&M campaign. Look at us go, we're anti-racist. How do you feel about that question? And
Loaded in all sense of the word question. No, not at all. Actually, it's a good question. I mean, I've been obviously bombarded with offers and all types of things. And I know for myself, I'll always say that, you know, we have to listen ourselves. I know that a lot of Canada want to stop talking and listen, but we have to do the same thing on our sides, because for equal footing, we need equal participation. We need everybody to help. And in this, corporations that are just staring us at us in the face now and saying, hey, you know what, like, this is a good idea to maybe change this campaign and be more inclusive and so on and so forth. It might lead to, I'll always say, the first time is always performative, or it'll look performative. Like, if you're onboarding just now and understanding this is what you need to do, or this is the direction that you need to go for the right reasons, even and for monetary and so on and so forth, it's very important that, you know, in the end, it will look performative at first. It's just continuing it, because for the first time it will be that way. It will look tokenism. It'll look like, you know what, we have our, here it is, inject Black dude or Black woman here, and then we're all good. I think where, and I've been put in situations where it's kind of like, you know what, throw a George in, we're okay. I say that, throw me in there. You will not only realize really soon what Black excellence looks like. We've already had to work twice as hard, work twice as fast, do twice as good just to get a little bit of footing. Imagine onboarding somebody who was just kind of like, all of a sudden you thought maybe it was even for performative reasons, but watch the excellence pour and you'll understand that, wow, what, like, man, Sully, such a great job. And you know what? A lot of, even not, I say apologies, but it's kind of like, you know what? we just thought we were trying to rectify something really quickly, but you know what, having you here, we really realized the talent and the strength and the know-how, what we've gotten out of this. And you know what, this won't be the last. Actually, if we thought in this office that it was just going to be a quick fix, we realized by just you being here, and you know what, that's a lot of other Black men and Black women. If you give us that opportunity, it will look performative at first, but if you're true to heart and spirit, you will let us thrive in there, and you'll actually see and understand why you shouldn't have done this in the first place. It helps in commerce, it helps in the opportunities, and helps in all these things. But of course, at first, what it's going to look like. But if we sit there and say, okay, well, they're just hiring for X amount, and then I don't know if I can swear, but I don't want to swear so bad, and just say, fuck it, you know what I mean? Like, we're not going to go here, not there, because, oh, you know what, they're only hiring because, then that defeats the purpose. That really defeats the purpose of what we're trying to do. You know what? Hire us. We want to be acknowledged. We want it to be counted. We want to be and have all these things. But never a handout, never charity, never something that we can know that we can earn for it. We don't want to be 3 steps up from the race. We just want to be in the line. Put us in the lineup. Let us race. Let us show. Let us show you, and or whether we fail or lose, or whether we win or lose this race. As long as we're there and counted, let us race. So then the people that are letting us do that, you know what, they will see that strength, and they will carry it forward. I know they'll carry it forward. It's just kind of like, it's crazy not to, whether it's in an ad, or whether you're hiring Lindura for that, that new commercial, you will see that you got way more than what you bargained for if you thought it was just going to be tokenism or some sort of a play on performative act of.
Mm-hmm.
I think, to answer your question.
It did. And it leads me like sort of in 2 directions. One of which is to like, maybe even like, I agree with you totally that let us in, and Black excellence will prove that like we deserve to be there. We should have been there from the start. But also like in terms of really ensuring that it's not tokenism, I feel like from the brand, there has to be internal changes that show that like the solution to solving disparities and inequalities is not necessarily just like allowing one person to have a good opportunity and like, but it's really like dismantling racism and white supremacy in the organization, so that can trickle down and create sort of an infrastructure such that it wasn't just this one time that we did this because it was trending to hire Black people, but that we've created an infrastructure that now makes it more accessible for us to now hire other communities of color and other people of different able-bodiedness, like to open that realm of like awareness of a brand to more issues than just like whatever issue is trending at the time, and we're going to slap someone in there to be like, we care about this issue. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, it goes deep, and every industry, every corporation in Canada, let alone everywhere else in the world, has to look within themselves and see, what they were doing or where they went wrong or where they can go right. Like it does go deep. It can't be just one opportunity.
Yeah.
It goes deep. It has to start on the inside, and everyone has to look at themselves twice, right, and just be like, what who are we? What are we doing? And how do we go forward?
On a practical level, how do you think we can hold brands and ourselves also, like in our own workplaces and lives, accountable to these types of changes, so that, for example, like real changes in policy might come out of something? Like I know in the UK, like there's a Modern Slavery Act now, which requires businesses to like publish what they're doing to combat slavery in the industry, all that sort of stuff. Like, how do we push for more of those types of changes to like hold brands accountable to really be doing the work?
Again, good question. I think that, giving the chance for corporations, especially after the push for inclusion during the summer, of course, of last summer, it would be nice for everybody to come on board and just adopt it, willingly. right? And say, you know what, we need change, and this is what we can do, X, Y, Z, and so on and so forth. But I think the most powerfulest thing for Black people, and to really acknowledge Black power and where we have it, is in the purse. And sometimes you have to change things forcefully to say, hey, if you're not going to change it fast enough, because we're already here, we already know what you should do, but are you going to do it? And a great example is of that is LeBron James, when he said, you know what, we're not going to work. And before we go back to work, we want X, Y, Z. And they weren't asking for much. They're asking for, stadiums that were already empty to turn into voting booths. And all of a sudden, because nobody was really listening, and corporations were just, we're talking about doing the surface stuff. But when they stopped the purse and they stopped the financing, they stopped the money, what happened was, there was a scramble. What do we do? What do they want again? And then all of a sudden, change. So change is not going to always come willingly with willing participants and people that are just, oh, yes, just yes. It's going to come by taking something away, and especially, and not taking, like when you have, and we're talking in sports, and you have, Black athletes, and really understanding their Black power. That's what you call Black power, not just to say Black power and raise a fist just for sake of. This is real power. And you take that and then you use it. And then that's how the system, which is, systemically, it's really broken. You can exalt change. You can make change. And anybody else come along, welcome to come. And nobody wants to force anybody, but you know what? Sometimes you have to just strike. You just have to strike. And that was awesome to see, because change was a coming, and change actually came, and they went back to work. And the thing is that forevermore, there's going to be corporations that are going to stop and wait a second, because they know that if it's not LeBron this time, it'll be Tiger Woods. I mean, he's in the hospital right now, but it will be somebody that can affect change in their discipline or acumen and so we understand our Black power. This is Black power, right? Canada and the rest of the world, and so on and so forth.
Amen. I guess I've noticed that a lot of the changes that I've seen since the Black Lives Matter movement really took off in June have been Black led. And I mean, that makes sense to me, or I should say BIPOC led, realistically. And I guess that makes sense to me. But when it comes to other allies looking to, start movements, or wonder how to support us in these movements, in these struggles, do you have any, I guess, insights, advice, thoughts?
Well, there are so many ways to support BIPOC brands. And again, obviously I started Black Designers of Canada as a Black man, and I started after I had my son. And it's one of those things that you have to think to yourself, it's kind of like, I can't have him go to school and talk my name, his father's name, and then them say, what are you talking about? Because my dad and my mom this and my mom this, and they are everywhere. But when we look your dad up, we can't find him. You're a liar. You're a liar. Your daddy ain't that. I couldn't have that. I needed to create some sort of a place where, we can be found, and he could talk about me and all these things. Now, how do others help amplify us, talk about us, by us? And again, I created Black Designers of Canada, Black designers, because I'm a Black man. But you know what? I know that, people of color in general, how can I explain? Like, when I started Black Designers of Canada, it was from my personal perspective, but I have so many other BIPOC friends and designers that I know personally that I've already helped navigate this thing, because we all have a struggle. how do we help Canada look at us and amplify us and help us and push this forward? Like I said before, we need equal participation. So it's kind of like, you know, that brand, so support that brand. And it's kind of like, you know, we're not living under a rock, you know, and if Black designers can help you out, but there's so many other BIPOC brands. And again, I'm now, with the help of certain people that have come, I want to expand on this, because having other people of color express themselves, even on Black Designers of Canada, it's not a thing. It's not something that I'm trying not to do, because it's kind of like, like it's ever encompassing. I'm surrounded by BIPOC, and all I would just say to my fellow Canadians and Americans and people around the world is, we're here. Speak about it, talk it up. And if you can't buy the purse, just, you have these platforms, whether you're a small blogger, large blogger, whether you're a newspaper, whether you're fashion, like the biggest guys, the smallest guys, just speak about it, talk about it, tell a friend. We all know about that group of friends that you have when you're in a circle and you guys get to talking, even for the fact, forget fashion, just for the fact if somebody says something just not right, call it out, say something. Just starting there, I think, is the most important thing, because we all have groups and we all have circle of friends that all look the same, Right now, everyone who leaves this today is going to have a group of friends and circles, and they all look the same. And somebody, there's always the one. Everyone's probably laughing right now because they're like, yeah, John or Stacy, talking to them. Just say, you know what, that's not cool. And just watch the energy churn. Watch the energy. And it'll be something you might even have to leave. Or it'll be something I'll be embraced and says, you know what, Stacy, it's time to go. No more of that at the cooler, the cooler watering hole talk. Just those little things will help me.
Yeah.
Those little things will help you. Those little things will help.
Continuing these conversations so that we can continue to hold each other accountable, so that can trickle up to continue to hold brands accountable, to continue to ask people to put their monies where their mouths are. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sorry about that. It's just
a lot of the movements that have started, like Black Artists for Freedom started in Ontario, I think recently, because 2 Black actors were like, why do we not have more recognition in this industry, etc. But like all of these, grassroots led movements also require funding. So like one of, I think, the best ways to be an ally is to like not just like include us, in your campaigns and like bring us into your teams, but also look at the work that we're already doing, the work that we've been doing since, to like fight inequalities in our communities, to ask for the police to be defunded, like those bigger picture issues that we necessarily have been battling with because we live them every day and we're already working on them. Like look for those opportunities to partner with those organizations, to give back to those organizations, and like to invest in training, mentorship for BIPOC people, I think is super also key.
Absolutely. And by the way, sorry about that, because it gets me, man. It gets me every time. So I'm glad, you gave me a little time to breathe a little bit, because it's one of those things. But support, yes. And for those corporations who are flush with cash that seems to have been doling it out to everybody, but it's kind of like, now's the time to put your money where your mouth is. I know that a lot of brands and a lot of people, even during June, specifically Blackout Tuesday, where everybody put up this JPEG, this black JPEG, some of the most egregious, some of the most, like the people that you're like, really, you, because I know that you are not really inclusive for all of your life and or your business and or your brand. And as a retailer, you've never gave Black people or BIPOC brands a second thought. And you were the first to post a black JPEG saying, oh, the Black people. And a lot of people got it wrong where they were like, oh, the Americans, you see, it's over there. That pissed me off because it's kind of like blaming it on over there and then saying, you see, Amy Cooper, you see what that American did to the other American. And then finding out she's Canadian. Surprise, surprise.
You know what the thing is, and one of the things that I think everyone also could be pushing for and asking for right now to help us in this struggle is documentation of things. Like the reason that people think that these things don't happen in Canada is because we haven't been collecting data on things to know that there are disparities. We haven't been collecting
Absolutely.
data so that we can hold our government accountable for
Absolutely.
creating these changes. And
Absolutely.
that's huge. Like just the bare fact that like segregation wasn't necessarily like law, so most people just don't know that it happened. It's just like interesting to me.
Yeah.
So that's key. One thing that I do want to, this conversation went by so quickly, so we do have to wrap it up. But I just want to like, this is a conversation that I wanted to continue going forward, even with you, George. It's just like, as we, fight for ourselves to be held in equal reverence and, with equal respect, dignity, and opportunity within the fashion industry, we still continue to exploit our brothers and sisters overseas. And that disparity to me, I'm like, to me, I want to know, like, I want to start to talk about how we can continue to like unify and stand up for each other here, asking our governments to, give us these equal opportunities, but also recognize that like we all have a role to play in making sure that the oppressions that we are experiencing here, we are also not inflicting on other people. Like, and like brands have a role, like as far as I'm concerned, like if you're hiring me to model for your clothing, but it's slave labor in Africa, and then you're also like shipping the extra clothing that you have overseas to Ghana, Accra, to sit in a landfill and like devastate their textile economy. Like, what do you mean you're working on anti-racism? Like, are you really? Like, just because you hired me and you put money in my pocket? Like, I don't need money just in my pocket. We need resources in our community. We need the communities to be lifted up so that we are all seeing each other. So that's one thing that like I hope that as this conversation continues, we can start to
Most definitely. Most definitely.
make sure that we're inclusive in the fights that we're fighting. And are there any questions in the chat? Let me just quickly take a peek. I am not familiar with Chloe Valdery. I know Mary had asked a question if I'm familiar with Chloe Valdery and the anti-racism program or theory of enchantment. George, I don't know if you are familiar with Chloe Valdery's work.
No, I'm not familiar.
Right, well, maybe this is an opportunity for
absolutely, absolutely it is. Absolutely it is. I'm definitely, how do I say, under a proverbial rock, just grinding. So it's always great to have a new resource and soak it in. You know what I mean? And just take it in. And absolutely.
Definitely. Candace, would you like to come in and close this off and let us all know what's happening next?
Yes. Thank you both so much for that very raw and honest discussion. I think, conversation certainly has the opportunity to lead to action. And that's, George, you said when you entered into those, rooms with buyers, et cetera, maybe next season. I think that's a good sort of metaphor for all of this is it's not next season, it's this season, and our season is now. It's a full circle approach. Lindura, when you mention looking at kind of when we look at brands and the lifespan, right? Like how can we say we're doing anti-racism work here when we're allowing exploitation overseas? There is, we talk about fashion and sustainability. There is no sustainability without looking at that intersectionality and without sustaining the people. Bringing Black voices, bringing all BIPOC voices in with representation on every level, and certainly in the fashion industry, requires some systems redesign. The system is broken. There's a new system required. I have good hope that with people like you two leading the way, but it is a sort of all hands on deck moment. There's an opportunity for those with privilege in their positions to bring others to the table, to level up representation all around. and opportunities like this to learn and kind of understand where we can lead in. Follow Black Designers of Canada, for example. I think diversifying, we can start even with diversifying our social media and where we're getting information from. What are we seeing? How do we mix that up? We learn from people like you along the way, and there's so many to learn from. And the fact is, the information exists, the people are there. It's about bringing them into the spaces in a bigger way. We're in a really sort of show your work moment. I think all brands are, are called now to, it's not going to happen overnight, but show us your work, show us the plan, show us how you're planning to take action, and bring the right people to the table. So at Life of Lindura on Instagram, at Real George Sully, as well as at Black Designers of Canada. It's a great place to start. This session has been recorded, so everybody will have an opportunity within the next approximately 48 hours. So share this around. If somebody is in your crowd that is bringing up something that's unsavory, give them an opportunity, give them the resources. That's a way to be an ally, is to bring people to the information so they can start unpacking it. I think, this is so exciting. Thank you both again for your time, for everybody who joined us today. We have in the next session at 1 p.m. That is a discussion on the McKinsey report, Diversity Wins, How Inclusivity Matters. We'll talk about going into organizations, as you both sort of addressed, and how we sort of bring people in. It starts, Georgie said, from the inside out. That is so true. So that will be an exciting session. You can still register for it if you haven't registered. Also send links to friends. These are really important conversations that we have. I'm so proud to be part of the board of Fashion Takes Action, and that they are moving in the direction to bring these conversations to the forefront for the fashion industry, which bleeds out into many other industries. Kelly Drennan, our executive director of Fashion Takes Action, who started the organization in 2007. It's not maybe next season. This is our season. Thank you to sponsors BDC, Business Development Bank of Canada, and Stringer LLP, and we will see you all at 1 p.m. Eastern. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.